It's John Bowden from Rock History Music, our special guest, Steve Porcaro, famous for Toto and a whole bunch more. In this one, we talk about the fact that people would bring in Steve to do his little wizardry. It started with David Foster, working with Gary Wright, which we'll get into. But we covered David Paich in this, Toto, and a lot more on Rock History Music. He wasn't the loudest Porcaro brother, but his imprint is all over pop and rock. Before Toto even had a hit, Steve Porcaro was on the road with Gary Wright on the famous Dreamweaver tour. Then he got a call from Boss Skaggs to join up on the Silk Degrees tour. There he was, skipping high school and learning how to sculpt songs. Some of the sounds that would later make Toto very famous. By the mid-70s, he was back in LA, helping to form the band alongside his brother Jeff Porcaro on drums, Bobby Kimball on vocals, Steve Lukather on guitar, keyboardist David Paich, and bassist David Hungate. Together, they became Studio Elite, the band every producer called when perfection mattered. On the band's biggest album from 1982, Toto IV, Steve Porcaro shimmered through some great tunes. Rosanna, named after his then-girlfriend, Rosanne Arquette. Africa. There were 6 singles on Toto IV and 4 hits. The other 2, Make Believe and I Won't Hold You Back. Waiting for Your Love was also released, and Afraid of Love. And let's not forget their debut album had a big hit as well, with Hold the Line. In 1978, Toto IV won 6 Grammys, but his real magic kind of reached beyond that band. When Michael Jackson needed a tender, otherworldly ballad for Thriller, he and producer Quincy Jones picked Steve Porcaro's Human Nature. He co-wrote that one. It's still one of the most haunting songs that Michael Jackson has ever released. And when Don Henley was carving out his own career in the 80s, there was Steve Porcaro right there on his very first hit, Dirty Laundry. And on his second record, Building the Perfect Beast, The Boys of Summer, All She Wants to Do Is Dance. Steve left Toto as a full-time member after the 7th one in the late 80s. He still toured with them and he still appeared on albums. But he wanted to do more. He wanted to write more. He got involved in film and TV. The latter's best example would be the series Justified. We lost his drumming legend brother Jeff Porcaro in 1992, and bassist Mike Porcaro, who joined the band after Toto IV, we lost him in 2015. But it's Steve Porcaro keeping the family name going. And remember, the Porcaro brothers are sons of the famous Joe Porcaro, who's worked with Frank Sinatra and some of the biggest names in the industry. He was a great drummer as well. That's some pretty good DNA. Steve released his first solo album in 2016 called Someday Somehow. And his new one is called The Very Day, which is available now. Brought you in a lot, David Foster.
A lot. There was a period there, just as his career was taking off. He got me my very first gig with Gary Wright. I wasn't out of high school yet. He had just done Dreamweaver with Gary Wright. He had just done those sessions. And Gary was looking for a guy who could play synth that would work for $200 a week. And Foster thought of me. We just started being friends. He started using Jeff on his own stuff, but especially when I'd gotten, that CS80 and stuff like that, he didn't do keyboards without me for a long time there. Yeah. That's how I got in the first Quincy thing, Michael Jackson Off the Wall. He had co-written 2 songs that were on the album. Quincy called him in to do synths. I was sitting there next to him. You know what I mean? Earth, Wind, and Fire, Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper, I conducted strings. He was doing his own string arrangements then. And it was like a bar of 7, and Foster didn't know how to even conduct that. And at Davlin, I conducted the strings on an Alice Cooper cut. These guys loved, and even like Paich, Paich did some great stuff without me, like on Mini Moog. He could get lucky and he got some great bass sounds on some of the first Toto demos and stuff. I was nowhere around on some of the Boss Skaggs on Silk Degrees. I didn't work on Silk Degrees. Yeah. I did the tour afterwards.
Yep.
But so these guys could get lucky with synths, but there were those times, believe me, again, when the producer's there and the artist is there and the engineer's there and it's $350 an hour and the clock is ticking. You didn't want to, and for some reason, the Mini Moog is acting up today. They loved having me around. They could focus on the part. You know what I mean? And I had no ego. I was not trying to show them up as a keyboard player. I was like, you play, I'll dial in the sound. What's the part you want to play? And I just loved making myself real handy. And Foster, for I can't tell you how many things. All the Quincy Jones stuff was first with Foster. Then these guys would start hiring me on their own. Quincy would hire me on his own, but first it was Brothers Johnson, Donna Summer, all this the list of stuff that I got to be on. Hall and Oates. I was on 2 Hall and Oates albums that he produced.
What was that called? Like you're working for $200 a week with Gary Wright. I know that you outrun that a little bit by the time Boss Skaggs called you, but that was still a good run for you, wasn't it?
Amazing. And Gary couldn't have been cooler. I didn't really know him from Spooky Tooth. He was definitely, I remember he was 30 years old, 32 years old or something at the time, and I was 17. But he could not have been more generous, nicer, would always buy us dinner. And he was connected. He was with D. Anthony, this big time manager, and these great agents. We were the opening act for all the Frampton Comes Alive. For that live album, we were the opening act on every one of those shows. We traveled all the time together with Frampton's band. We were the opening act, same manager, same agent, and it was a no-brainer. All those things in Cobo Hall. That's where Dreamweaver first took off, was in Detroit, and we just, what they didn't know. People, $200. You know what I mean? He only paid you $200. I would have paid him $200.
Yeah.
I was living the dream because right away we're doing. It's not like we played some clubs and some small things when Gary would headline, but right away we were doing like Days on the Green. I'm doing stadium concerts at 17 years old. Yeah, we were the opening act playing at 9 a.m., but still they would let them in there the night before. So the place would be packed. And I would talk about living my dream of I just wanted to play in front of people.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get the hell out of school. And I was about to start trying to put together a club band playing top 40 stuff. I just wanted to do what my brothers were doing. I wanted to do what they were doing. Jeff was, toured with Steely, was toured with Sonny and Cher, and then Steve was in Steely Dan and toured with them. And Mike was with Seals and Crofts and Michael Franks. And I just wanted to.
Well, Jeff was with Seals and Crofts as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. At different times,
Yeah.
I just wanted to be doing that. I wanted to get the hell out of Dodge, but I didn't have I auditioned for Mac Davis and I auditioned for Tim Buckley and did not even come close. Believe me, Tim Buckley was looking for someone with some jazz chops and stuff like that. And I was like, so the Gary gig where I mostly was playing Moog bass and, maybe a clavinet part here and there and a synth pad was just like, I had a ball. You know what I mean? I was living the dream.
When you were in the Silk Degrees tour, when he gave you a call, and I remember you had said making at least double, you had played with your brother, with Jeff, obviously, in specific bands, had you though?
Not that much. Not that much. That's another reason why that Gary Wright gig was so important, is because Jeff and Paige, they knew they'd come to some high school things I had done. They knew my high school band they used to show up at my high school band gigs. They were so fun. And my band was amazing. Lukather, Landau, Carlos Vega, John Pierce. They were in my high school band. And it was my band. I picked which songs we did. But dig the guys in my band. All of us except Carlos went to Grant High School. I mean, they were all in my high school. Lukather and Landau, John Pierce. Carlos, Andy Leeds met him at the Hollywood Bowl. They were both ushers. Carlos went to Eagle Rock High, but he was like, let's check this guy out on drums. And it was like, okay, that was my high school band. So, the guys, Jeff and Paige, would come to my rehearsals and they'd show up at our gigs. We'd be playing proms. And here comes Jeff and Paige walking in. They wanted to play cowbell. They just wanted to, it was the gig. They wanted to be at the gig. You know what I mean? I'm doing top 40 stuff. But then with Gary, they saw how I could handle these synths live.
Yeah.
The stuff was so new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Boz, Paige, they just had done Silk Degrees where there were strings. They needed someone to cover those string parts. There was this thing called an ARP string ensemble. You know what I mean? Very simple stuff. I didn't have to play the piano parts. I didn't have to learn any of the two-fisted piano parts. It was either Page or Jay Winding or someone else who was real solid. I just had to do the synth stuff, which was, again, they saw how I could really handle that stuff live with, seeing me with Gary, and that kind of, I was the obvious choice to be second keyboard player with Boz. I wanted to tell you, Chase is kicking ass. I've been seeing
Thank
clips
you.
of your boy playing drums, and he's like on this next level. I just wanted you to hear that coming from me. He's got this confidence and this looseness about him, and that is really, really impressive. He's really got it.
Well, you know who who his hero is, your brother, right?
But I'm just, you know what? There's a lot of guys that my brother's their hero. Chase has got it. You know what I mean? I kind of I wish he was in another time, to be honest with you. I wish it was another time, but and we'll talk more about it. I want to ask you some stuff maybe after we're done, but
Thank
he,
you.
he's really impressing me. I just wanted to let you know that.
Do you know what his favorite picture is of all time? You and him
Sincerely.
sitting down. The picture in Vancouver when we were
Yeah.
backstage,
Yeah,
that's
I
his
know the one.
favorite picture of all time.
He's really kicking ass.
Oh, anyway,
Really
there you go.
proud. You know what I mean? He sounds great.
How do you look at sense of purpose? Because it keeps people alive and healthy usually.
No, let me tell you too, something that's really dawned on me is that I'll hear a lot of my contemporaries talking about, man, those the days when we, especially all the yacht talk of yacht rock and all this stuff and what it was like then. And man, we were all in the room together and we were bouncing off each other. And there was the producer and the engineer and the artist, and we played and we did it and it was done. Um, Believe me, I was there. I wasn't usually one of the guys cutting the tracks, but I sure witnessed a whole lot of that, of these very, very talented musicians nailing it one or two passes and what they would come up with. So I'm very aware of it. But what I've done, and I don't see I see a lot of my contemporaries bemoaning that those days are gone, that everyone's in their little home studios, phoning in their parts, and what a drag that is. I look at it differently. I'm looking at it, I embrace the way things are now, wherein I love having a Mike Landau play guitar on my thing, and I send him my track. I send him my whatever demo, fake samples, synths, guitars I've been monitoring on a separate track. I'll give him a little bit of direction, and he sends me back 5 tracks of stuff that, you know what? If I was in the room with him, I would have stopped him from doing that. I would have said, hey, that third thing that he sent me, I would have gone, I got that covered. Don't bother with that. You know what I mean? Instead, I get these surprises that I would have never thought of in a million years. And the control freak in me is still able to go and grab them. And you know what? I want that to happen in every B section. That one fluke thing he did on that third B section where he screwed up, quote unquote, we would have fixed it or something. That's my favorite part of the tune. I'm going to put that on every B section. And so I've embraced. Sure, I remember those days. Sure, those days were great for what they were. And it was so much fun to be a part of it. But, a drummer like Shannon Forrest, I'm able to send him my 2-bar drum. I don't spend one. I look at what color my hair is in the mirror, and I realize how little time I have left. And I'm not going to be tweaking drum machine parts with what time I have left. I do my little 2-bar thing that I wrote to and that I've been working to, and I send it to Shannon, and I get back this nice, nuanced, incredible drum part. I know who his favorite drummer was. You know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about? And he knows what I want to hear, and it's done. It's done. It's just I'm embracing these days. It's really a realization of my mortality. I really had that thing. I forever was Jeff and Mike's little brother, and I thought I was going to be 31 years old forever. And now I realize, the clock's ticking, and everything I do now with my music, if I can, and believe me, the first couple songs when I wanted brass on it, people used to hire me to do synth brass because of my collection of samples and because of the way I knew synthesis. But if I caught myself spending more than 10 minutes getting a trumpet sound or a brass sound, I stopped. I said, F this. I'm going to call in a trumpet player. They'll do what I'm trying to do easily. I only want to do what only I can do.
Tonight, speaking of hooks on trumpet, was it Joe Kraus?
Yes, it is Joe from Germany. Yeah.
That's like a hook, the way he plays trumpet on that. Holy, I heard that and went, what the hell?
Well, that's what I thought 20 years ago when I heard this song called Get Rid from this band Tab 2. A friend of mine who was trying to help them out, he gave me a CD of theirs. I never heard of them. It was this German acid jazz band kind of thing. They were rapping and doing hip hop beats, and then had muted trumpet. Joe was you know what I mean? He was a trumpet player. And there was this one song on there called Get Rid that I just loved. I thought that hook, that chorus just killed me. And here, this many years later, I got in touch with them through the guy who hit me to him. And I said, do you guys mind if I just grab that thing? I want to write. You know what I was thinking of is Baker Street, Jerry Rafferty.
Yeah.
And how it was, right? Great song, instrumental chorus, no words in the chorus, just this great saxophone line. That was my thinking for Tonight, the song Tonight. And I thought, I love that, just that hook from that song of theirs. And I said, can I make you guys write, or, will you be co-writers with me on this? Can I just grab that whole thing and just plug it into my song? And they were like, sure. We'd been working on some other things, Joe and I. He's helped me with some other little bebop things that haven't been heard yet. But I thought the same thing you did. I thought, how cool is that? It just seemed so up and happy, and it was such a groove. Never sampled anything in my life, and I was like,
Really?
come on, can I grab that? Oh yeah. I was like, can I grab that? You know what I mean? As far as anything musically.
When I've talked to mature people who have this fervor for life all of a sudden, in spite of what they might have been a few years ago, I mean, they're just going, Bill Bruford told me, I know you're a big Yes fan, but Bill Bruford said, I think he said the 60s were, in his 60s, it might have been 70s. He says, the best years of my life. He says, I don't know. I just felt more comfortable. The body was not as comfortable, but I was more comfortable in just, it's discernment. It's all those mother statements you can put in. I'm going to have fun here. I'm going to go out having fun. I'm going to go out doing what I want to do.
The first time I saw Yes was very early 70s. Alan White had been with them for 2 weeks. And it was mind-blowing. And I didn't miss a concert for the next, I don't even know how many years. They'd be at the Forum. I never missed a show. And that was what they call the classic Yes lineup. But for me, and a lot of my Yes fan friends would disagree with me, but for me, the peak was close to the edge.
Yeah.
I like there was some great stuff afterwards, some incredible stuff afterwards. But for me, something that I still listen to, the whole album is close to the edge. And you know what? And I know those guys didn't give out songwriting credit and stuff like that real easily. Take a look at those first albums. Take a look at all that stuff, and Bill Bruford. What was the one thing missing after Close to the Edge? Everyone else was there. And I loved Alan White. I don't want to take anything away from what a great musician, and by the way, what a great guy he was too. But what was the one thing missing?
It doesn't really matter. Yeah, I like that one.
Me too.
So
that happens like some of the best songs. That was me trying to learn a piece of software. This is why I'm constantly seduced by, you know what I mean? My attention deficit is like there's constantly new shiny thing running by when I'm supposed to be working, when I'm supposed to be finishing something. When my work gets hard, all of a sudden, whether it's a new song idea or a new piece of software, I all of a sudden see. For that, it was Ableton Live. I was trying to teach myself Ableton Live, and I was doing this practice sequence, just trying to go through the motions and just do a little 8 bar whatever to just try to learn Ableton Live. And I came up with that, what you hear in the intro, that very first thing, which was very cool. And I'd been sitting on it for the last 3 years or something like that. And then, for the record, it was one that I definitely wanted to finish.
Maryland, first track, co-written by one of my favorite guys that I've talked to twice in the last 6 months, Stan Lynch.
Great. Yeah, I brought Stan in way after the fact. The song was pretty much done. And that was just something that came together the last couple of years. That was a recent thing, and I had the chorus all done lyrically and stuff. But as I get older, I'm just trying to up my lyric game. You know what I mean? A little bit, and well, a lot actually. And I brought Stan in to just kind of give it the once over, and he helped a lot. We had just finished Saints and Angels, which was something Paige and I brought him in right away. I kind of had a rough outline lyrically of what I wanted, and I knew I wanted to name drop as many California coastal cities as I could in the song. But Stan came in and just gave it this kind of narrative, pulling into a driveway, starting off, "Come with me, I know just where to go." Stan really completed the song for us. You know what I mean?
Well, Saints and Angels, such a cool California sunshine song, and Stan plays drums on it. And
It was the total love letter to California. And Stan, by the way, he played his ass off on it, and he's got this amazing studio. You know what I mean? Where he lives, he's got this amazing home studio, and it was great having him be so involved and play drums on it, and just working. We never kind of worked together back in the day when I was doing Henley, and I knew he
yeah,
was very close. I had worked with Mike Campbell, and I was in the same room when we did Boys of Summer and stuff like that. I mean, not that we were ever friends. Ben Mott and I have some mutual friends, but I never really knew any of those guys. I never knew them. I knew, Stan had worked closely with Toto on some stuff after I had left the band. I just kind of popped my head in the studio a couple times and would say hello to him, and we would see each other at Henley parties or something like that. But I never really knew him. But I knew David did, and I just kind of, again, in wanting to finish stuff and have the level be up there, I was real quick to say, let's give Stan a call.
make sure you subscribe to our channel, click the bell notification so you don't miss anything. Also, like our videos, share them on social media, and comment on them as well. If you want to make a donation, there's a PayPal link at the very top of all our videos. I'm John Bowden. This is Rocky Street Music. Take care.